As you can see, I have sketched out my 3 different moths, but what I do first is I sketch out exactly one half, and this time I've chosen the left half. And I use a small piece of tracing paper to recreate that drawing that I did, which is half of the moth. I then flip that tracing paper over, and what I'll do is I'll line it up and redraw it. As you can see, I'm trying to create a drawing where my pencil marks are dark enough that they'll transfer. I'll line it up in the center and I'll redraw it, giving a fair amount of pressure so that that graphite will imprint on my paper enough so I can create a symmetrical drawing of the moths. I chose to do an illustration of moths because I've drawn a lot of things with wings. I've drawn mini birds, I've drawn and painted butterflies. I've used many different kinds of media such as ink pens and colored pencils and watercolor or a combination of those things. And I wanted to look for something that's still in my style, things that I'm interested in from nature, but something a little bit different. And I came across moths. And in my research, I discovered that moths come in a big variety. They can be very colorful. Some of them are very large. And I was really surprised. And I thought, well, I need to do an illustration. And so I chose 3 that I thought were really beautiful. And they were different enough that I thought that they would look nice illustrated together. So as you can see, I'm working on the last one. I'm tracing that left side using tracing paper. I'm flipping it over. I'm going to line it up and I'm going to trace it again. And it's not cheating using tracing paper when it's your own original drawing. You came up with that drawing, you can trace it, and this is just a trick for symmetry. I'm finishing up the last moth. I'm putting in a little bit of detail and making sure that both sides match and we have good symmetry as best as possible. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take it's called an RSVP Pentel pen. You find them in the office supply section at any store. They're very inexpensive, and I've discovered that I really like using them for sketching because they don't have a really harsh mark. They're lighter in color and they're great for coming up and going over graphite and kind of finalizing an ink drawing to get all your guidelines in there and all your outlines done. And then I go through and I take my eraser and I clean up all my graphite lines. And then I'm going to use my very favorite drawing utensil, which is the Sharpie pen. The Sharpie pen is another very affordable art supply. It doesn't bleed through paper. It's wonderful, and I will go through and I use a lot of hatching marks. I'm going through each one, and I know this is a time lapse, so it's kind of going fast, but I go through and I add shading with my Sharpie pen. I add hatching marks with my Sharpie pen. I add a lot of details to everything. And during any of my ink drawings, I use Sharpie pen most of the time. And I might use a larger Sharpie if I'm doing a large area. Now I'm going to use a new art supply that I've never used before, and I'm very excited that I discovered them. It is the Arteza brush pens. Arteza is another affordable brand for art supplies, and I really wanted to try a new medium, and I wanted to do illustrations with brush markers. And brush markers, they're like a marker, but the tips are like a paintbrush, and you can layer the colors and blend the colors together, which is really cool. And you can also take, these are water-based, and because they're water-based, I can take a small paintbrush with a little bit of water and blend them if I want to, but they blend beautifully, and I can layer colors to create new colors. I was really excited to find them. And so as you can see, I'm finishing up using my Arteza brush pens. I'm trying to have some of the colors bounce in between. So this is where I take nature and I kind of tweak it a little bit for composition purposes, where I might use a color at the top moth and that is also on the bottom moth to create some balance. So if you want to add some white accents or highlights, I love my white gel pen. White gel pens are great for adding a little bit of details or highlights at the end, and they look great with ink drawings. I've used them in watercolor paintings. I've used them in graphite paintings. I've used them in a lot of different ways, but the white gel pen is a really cool tool to use with any of your illustrations or drawings. I'm going to add in just a little bit of details here and there. But if you notice, all three moths have some kind of color that's similar. So the top moth has a little bit of that peachy color, and I bring in a little of that peachy color in the green moth. And then the bottom moth has a little bit of the gold and the burgundy purplish color, which is also in the top moth. So this is another way that I'm trying to pull my composition together, is by using color that kind of runs through the different moths, and it creates balance. I also chose the top moth and the bottom moth to have their wings more open, and then the center moth to have their wings more down and have different, kind of like a tail. And that also added to my composition, and I thought that created some unity in there. And this is the completed illustration of the 3 different moths. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.